what really drives Antifa? That's coming up on today's Hot Zone.
This is the Hot Zone. Engaging with the news in a whole new way, international war correspondent Chuck Holton brings insight into areas of crisis and lets you help those affected.
Hey folks, Chuck Holton here. Thanks for watching the Hot Zone and thanks for being a part of this growing community. We continue to grow. I'm here in West Virginia and it just seems so tranquil and peaceful. But man, all you have to do is turn on your computer, and what a mistake that is today. There is an absolute ton of violence and chaos happening right here in our country. Let's start in Seattle. So while I was out there last week, I watched the Seattle police under attack, literally under attack by thousands of protesters turned rioters, and they were all screeching Black Lives Matter, the rioters, not the police, and among other things. So there were like 11 policemen who were injured in that one Saturday that I was there watching the riot. And the Seattle City Council, in response to all this mayhem and chaos, decided the best thing you could do would be to defund your police department.
Today is only the first step in that process.
The council made cuts to the mounted patrol, school resource officers, the navigation team, harbor patrol, public affairs, and the SWAT team.
Because, I mean, obviously, the best way to avoid having burning buildings is to get rid of your fire department. I mean, every time you go to a house fire, there's the fire department. So, hey, let's get rid of the fire department. We solved the problem. Magic, just like that. Unbelievable. So the Seattle City Council voted 8-1 to defund the police department by about 14% this year, with more cuts coming, lay off about 100 cops, and slash the salaries of all the top brass pretty significantly by about 40%. The Police Chief Carmen had her salary slashed by $100,000. So she promptly quit her job today. And I have to hand it to her. I watched the press conference that she gave when she announced it, and she was very classy. She didn't speak ill of the city council. She did not devolve into attacks on the people who had thrown her under the bus. She was upbeat. She was positive. She said, we're going to look forward, not backward. And I wish the city the best. Unfortunately, it's not going to include this 28-year veteran of the force who has been on the police force in Seattle. She's their first Black police chief in like 168 years of history. And there you go. The woke Black Lives Matter crowd kicked out the first Black female police chief, just ran her out. She just couldn't take it anymore. What it would really take would be a heavy hand against the evildoers, and just letting the police do their job, taking the handcuffs off, letting them do their job, and breaking up these nightly riots that are literally burning down the police buildings. They're now going into residential neighborhoods and knocking on doors. And, if you don't answer their questions the way they like, then they're going to vandalize your house at best and maybe kill you and burn down your house at worst. And that is what's happening in Seattle right now. Well, that's nothing compared to what we saw in Chicago. So in Chicago, there was a false narrative that was put out that the police had shot an unarmed Black man. That didn't happen. But because of that false narrative, ostensibly, I don't even think they're related, but they use that as a convenient excuse. Literal caravans of rioters drove into the Miracle Mile, the nicest shopping district in Chicago, the upscale district, all the expensive stores. I've stayed down there before, and they started smashing windows and stealing everything. They brought U-Haul trucks with them so that they could load up their loot, and they literally pillaged the Miracle Mile. Police were there, but with literally thousands of rioters There was nothing they could do, so they just watched. This is what America is coming to. Now, I was on CBN's podcast earlier today, and we were talking a little bit about this, that the upshot of all this is going to be that we are going to lose maybe up to a third of cops are going to retire, take early retirement, or just outright quit. It's going to get harder and harder to recruit new cops. You're not going to get the best and the brightest because they're not going to go for a job where they're, even if you do everything right, even if you follow the law, even if you follow the Constitution, even if you follow every edict of the city and do everything right, you still could have your life ruined by an overzealous politician trying to gain votes and pandering to the woke mob. You still could end up in jail. You still could have your family tracked down and have their lives ruined. Like we've seen so many cops go through that. And so we're not going to get the best and the brightest anymore. Unfortunately, we're just not. And, you know, even if a third of the cops leave, that doesn't mean we have 2/3 the police presence left, because the city is still the same size, be it Detroit or Chicago or Minneapolis or Portland or Seattle. The city's still the same size. So that means that cops are more spread out than they were before. And it's going to take them longer and longer to get to a call. And like I say, they're not going to want to go to a call until it was over. So if there's a group of thugs that wants to break into your house and rape your family and murder you, well, the police aren't going to come until it's all over. And the only reason they'll come is just to write up the report and go home. Because who wants to get involved in something that could very well, very likely end up with you being vilified, run out of town, lose your job, maybe go to jail? It's just not worth it. And you can't blame them. You really can't. So I want to play a little bit of Carmen Best's news conference today, because she was so classy about it. She was just upbeat and, you know, said nice things. But I want you to hear a little bit from the mayor, who is very much responsible for everything that's going on in Seattle, very much responsible. But even she is pretty fed up with the city council.
The vast majority of what they passed yesterday was exactly what the chief and I proposed. The $3 million they added, it'd be one thing if they just added $3 million cut and said, Chief, exercise your charter duties. Do what you know how to do and manage against this. But instead, they wanted to micromanage and play mini police chief. Cut here, cut there, do this, do that. It showed a complete lack of respect and, frankly, a misunderstanding of how the department even operates.
You know, no other department head has arbitrarily had their salary cut, and the salary cut of every single member of their command staff. And while I said I'm not in it for the money, but it did seem punitive, and I was especially offended by the fact that they would even suggest that my command staff take a salary cut. We have the most diverse command staff in the country: Black, white, Latino, Asian, male, female, sworn, civilian, PhDs, JDs, everyone. We have an incredible group of people that we've assembled. And to even consider not compensating them fairly was ridiculous. Illegal, by the way, but also ridiculous. And so how else am I supposed to feel? There's a whole room full of department heads in here, and not one of them was named, just me. So yeah, I take it personal.
So now going back to the riots in Chicago, here's the craziest thing about this. I mean, look, there's no way you can draw a line between Black Lives Matter and, racial justice and systemic racism and all that sort of stuff, and knocking over a Best Buy or a Macy's and stealing everything inside. There's just no logical, reasonable line you can draw there. Barbarism is barbarism, or as my mom used to say, two wrongs don't make a right. So even if there is terrible systemic racism and cops are hunting black people across this country, none of which is true. It's not true. But even if it was true, that would not justify the kind of rioting that we're seeing in Chicago, where they just go stealing stuff. But one Black Lives Matter leader tried to justify it on camera and basically said the quiet part out loud. Check this out.
Care if somebody decides to loot a Gucci or a Macy's or a Nike, because that makes sure that that person eats. That makes sure that that person has clothes. That's reparations. That is reparations. Anything they want to take it, because these businesses have insurance. They're going to get their money back. My people aren't getting anything.
So, okay, look. If you're going to say that this constitutes reparations, first of all, reparations aren't a thing. You don't get reparations for something that happened to somebody else. And nobody that was down there rioting on the other night has ever been a slave. Nobody has ever had their grandfather been a slave. They just haven't. It's been, I don't know, more than 150 years since we've had slaves in this country. And by the way, what color were the people who voted to abolish slavery? Oh yeah, they were all white people. And what color were the majority of the men who fought and died on the side of the Union in the Civil War? Oh yeah, 385,000 white people gave their lives to abolish slavery in the United States. So guess what? If we're going to talk reparations, then the families of those people need to be the first people in line for reparations, without a doubt. And so, reparations, are you kidding me? This is no. And think about how dangerous this is. Now, fortunately, the vast majority of Black people in America are not stupid enough to swallow this line that you can go steal a big screen TV from Best Buy and call it reparations. They're not stupid enough. But we've got a very large number of Black people in our country, and that's great. But there are it doesn't take 1% of those people to absolutely burn down this country. It doesn't take, it takes several 100,000 of them maybe who to swallow this and to get caught up in the mob mentality and start looting your town. That's a bad precedent to set. And I've seen Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez make this same case that, this looting, it's not so bad because these people are hungry. And if they have to loot something so that they can eat, well, then so be it. That is such a dangerous argument. Oh my gosh. That is so dangerous, because when you start to justify criminal activity and barbarism in the name of, they're just hungry, they need food. Well, guess what? The poorest people in America are still some of the wealthiest people on this planet. And so where do you draw the line? Do you draw the line only at Black and brown communities? Do you draw the line only at the poverty line? I guarantee you that a lot of the people who were down there rioting in Chicago are living above the poverty line, without a doubt. Unbelievable. So this is a very dangerous precedent to set. And all of this is being coordinated. If it seems like this is just, brush fires popping up here and there, just because of a guy who was killed by a cop, you got another thing coming. That's not what it's all about. This is a planned and orchestrated takedown of America. This is what it is. And it's designed to drive Donald Trump out of office. And we're talking about more of that in a second, but let's just talk about Black Lives Matter. They have 13 points on their website. I want you to go read it. Go to Black Lives Matter website and read the 13 points in their manifesto there. It is an absolutely communist organization. They want to break up the nuclear family, and they want America to become a communist nation. Well, guess who else wants America to become a communist nation? Antifa. Here's what AG Bill Barr had to say about Antifa on Fox just a couple days ago. Listen to this.
About Antifa. I don't think people really understand Antifa. And they say empirical and anecdotal evidence shows that Antifa is in fact highly networked, well-funded, has a global presence. It is a flat organizational structure with dozens and possibly hundreds of local groups. And by the way, the oldest group is in Portland. They say Antifa's stated long-term objective, both in America and abroad, and it got its birth in Europe, England, then Germany, then the United States, is to establish a communist world order. And by the way, this information is put out. It's not like we're conspiracy theorists or so forth. In the United States, Antifa's immediate aim is to bring down the demise of the Trump administration. It's an attack on capitalism. They say they're attacking fascism when they're Marxist fascists, such thing. To bring down the Trump administration. It's interesting that one of the co-founders of Black Lives Matter said that one of her focuses is to bring down the Trump administration. What is it about the Trump administration that stands in their way?
Well, I think they would be, generally for bringing down any administration. They are a revolutionary group that is interested in some form of socialism, communism. They're essentially Bolsheviks. Their tactics are fascistic, and your description of them is consistent with what I've seen.
Okay, so you see how dangerous this is? And when we can't count on the police to protect us from people like that, when we can't count on our politicians, our mayors, our city councils to protect us from people like that, then Americans start to take the law into their own hands. And you know what the problem is with Americans taking the law into their own hands? That's a really bad idea, because Americans don't have rules of engagement. The police are held to a very high standard. They have very tight rules of engagement on what kind of force they can use. The rest of America does not. And you push Americans to the point where you start going through neighborhoods. Antifa's walking through residential neighborhoods, threatening to burn down people's houses now in Portland. Try that in Austin. Try that in Texas. Try that in Weatherford. Try that in Nevada. Try that in some places in rural California. Try that in any rural area of the United States. A lot of people are going to die because of this. Now, you mark my words. They're saying that September 13th, they're going to go and lay siege to the White House. And I don't know what they mean by that, but I don't think it's going to be pretty. We've just seen an attempted attack on the White House in the last couple days. This is not going to be pretty. So buy lots of ammo and be prepared. And you know what? If you live in one of these hellholes that like Minneapolis or Portland or Seattle, you might want to think about moving back to America, like this place where I'm sitting right here, where the police still do their jobs and people still respect the police, and we don't have to lock our doors, and everybody gets to carry whatever gun they want, and people are polite to each other, because that's what America's all about.
The Hot Zone is produced by Amy Holton and Livefire Media. Copyright 2019.